Hey folks, John Becker here, State Representative from Claremont County, bringing to you another update on the impeachment of Governor Mike DeWine. So what I want to do is review with you a particular Facebook post that I saw, and if you are seeing other Facebook posts or having communications with your state representatives and you're getting pushback as to why they cannot or will not co-sponsor the impeachment resolution, so get with me and let me know what they're saying, or have them call me. Because frankly, I think a lot of it is just excuses rather than what they believe is really the case. But frankly, I'm not sure. But that's up to them to explain to their constituents. And I'm simply here to answer questions and do pushback where I think is appropriate. So this one particular Facebook post I want to review with you is from one of my colleagues. Great guy, get along with him very well. It just appears that he and I have a difference of opinion. And he is an honest guy. So, what he's saying here, I believe, he really believes to be true. And we just have a difference of opinion. And I'm going to point out what that is. And I'm not going to mention any names who he is that posted this. It really doesn't matter. What you can do with this information is use it for your state representative. Send them this video, or when you're getting pushback from them and why they're not going to co-sponsor, explain to them some of the answers that I'm giving you here today. So what he says is kind of a lengthy Facebook post, and I'm just going to kind of read this to you kind of line by line and pick it apart as I go here. So what he started out with was, the reason I'm not supporting the impeachment is because the governor has not broken any laws. Really? Okay, so let's talk about all the laws that the governor has broken. So I'm going to kind of go down a laundry list here, and in a few places I'm going to cite in the Ohio Gov code where the governor could be criminally charged. So he canceled the election. So that was the March primary election, and that's actually a fourth-degree felony, potentially under 3599.01A2. So that's Ohio Revised Code 3599.01A2. Then he also rescheduled an election. Frankly, it's actually two separate crimes. He doesn't have the authority to do that either. Which, by the way, if you wanted to know, where was the election scheduled, that's Ohio Revised Code 3501.01. Okay, so he placed nearly 12 million Ohioans under 24/7 house arrest with a list of government-approved exceptions, under threat of criminal charges up to 90 days in jail and a $750 fine. So for that criminal violation, I would refer you to Ohio Revised Code 2921.45 Section A, and that's a first-degree misdemeanor. So he's also assumed dictatorial powers. He violated the separation of powers doctrine by creating new law via the Ohio Department of Health. So since he's working with the Ohio Department of Health on this stuff, as well as the Secretary of State for rescheduling election, we can also talk about collusion potentially. There's constitutional violations here, intimidation under Ohio Revised Code 2921.03. Or even conspiracy. So there's all kind of possibilities here he could be charged with. Arbitrarily and capriciously picked winners and losers amongst businesses and decided which ones could operate at what capacity and what business hours under threat of criminal charges up to 90 days in jail and a $750 fine. So that could be coercion under Ohio Revised Code 2905.12, Section A, subsection 5, which is a second-degree misdemeanor. He prohibited hospitals, doctors, dentists, et al. From my wife's a Latin teacher, so she teaches me Latin a little bit here and there. Et al. It means and others, from treating patients and elective preventive care under threat of criminal charges up to 90 days and $750 fine. Ordered schools to close without regard to the authority of the state school board. Same thing, 90 days in jail, $750 fine. Ordered the general public to wear face coverings without regard to civil liberties. Again, under a threat of 90 days in jail, a $750 fine. Ordered congregants and houses of worship to wear face coverings under threat of criminal charges, 90 days in jail, $750 fine. See the theme here. Holds business licenses hostage and requires employees to wear face mask coverings, hence creating a hostile work environment under threat of criminal charges up to 90 days in jail and a $750 fine. Violated the Commerce Clause of the U.S. Constitution by prohibiting the people of Pennsylvania from purchasing liquor in Ohio under threat of criminal charges up to 90 days in jail and a $750 fine. So to kind of review all those and throw out a couple of others. So here's 5. I'm going to give you 5 potential crimes he could be charged with. Well, I guess multiple counts under the same, some of the same sightings of the Ohio Revised Code. So what I would refer you to is under the Ohio Revised Code 3599.01, Section A, subsection 2, 2921.45, Section A, 2905.12, Section A, subsection 5, 2921.03, 2909.23. So you guys might be looking up some of these and say, Becker, come on, that's a stretch. You couldn't charge him with this or that or another thing. I said, okay, you're right. Some of this is a stretch, no question about it. But let's talk about what a stretch really is here. Let's talk about ORC 3701.13. So if that sounds familiar to you, that is what the governor's been hanging his hat on all this time with the Ohio Department of Health, saying that he's got broad authority to shut down the state, put 12 million people under house arrest, tell hospitals that they can't treat patients unless it's an emergency, and close down bars at 10 o'clock at night, and tell restaurants they can only seat people at third capacity or half capacity or whatever it is. All of these sweeping orders that the governor has been shoving down our throats for the last 6 months, he gets out of this one section of the code, which I want to review with you, and you tell me if this is a sweeping authority or if it is a stretch of what was intended in the law. So what I'm going to do, this is 3701.13, you can look it up yourself, and there's multiple paragraphs here. But out of these multiple paragraphs in this section, there's one clause within one sentence that he is hanging his hat on. I'm going to read you the entire sentence. So this is one sentence out of this paragraph. Again, 3701.13. The department, and that's referring to the Ohio Department of Health, the department may make special or standing orders or rules for preventing the use of fluoroscopes for I had to look up what's a fluoroscope. It's an x-ray machine. For non-medical purposes that emit doses of radiation likely to be harmful to any person. So that's the first clause in this one sentence, referring to fluoroscopes. So apparently at county fairs, or the state fair, I don't know, back in the 1800s or early 1900s when this was written, and x-rays were new and people didn't know how dangerous they were. They were used for non-medical purposes, and people were being injured by the radiation. That's why this was written, and I think this was around the time of the Spanish flu also. So the second clause, and this is the one where he's hanging his hat on it, for preventing the spread or contagious or infectious disease. So for preventing the spread of contagious or infectious diseases, comma. Next clause, this is all one sentence, next clause. For governing the receipt and conveyance of remains of deceased persons, and for such other sanitary matters as are best controlled by a general rule. So I'm going to read that sentence to you again. This time I'm not going to stop between all the clauses. Maybe I'll tell you where the commas are. So again, this is where I'm saying this is a stretch to begin with, where the governor is pulling all this authority to claim dictatorial powers over the people of Ohio that supposedly the General Assembly granted him. So you tell me, this is what it says. I want to read it to you again. And you look it up yourself, 3701.13. And this is one long sentence, and the paragraph is, there's a lot more there, but this is the only relevant part. But it's one sentence here, again, where he's pulling out this one clause in this one sentence. The department may make special or standing orders or rules for preventing the use of fluoroscopes for non-medical purposes that emit doses of radiation likely to be harmful to any person, comma, for preventing the spread of contagious or infectious diseases, comma, for governing the receipt and conveyance of the remains of deceased persons, comma, and for such sanitary matters as are best controlled by the general rule, or by a general rule, period. So then the statement goes on from my colleague on Facebook why he's not signing up on this co-sponsoring the impeachment resolution. So the next thing he said was, to impeach outside of illegality. So he's arguing that the governor has done nothing illegal, and I just read to you a multitude of crimes, as well as where he could be charged under the Ohio Revised Code. To impeach outside of illegality would have to be on the basis of dereliction of duty, gross negligence, or incompetency, or the inability to fulfill one's duties. None of that is true. Okay, well, that's a head scratcher. Okay, so I guess I'm wondering for the state representative, where did he come up with this list? Dereliction of duty, gross negligence, or incompetency, or the inability to fulfill one's duties. I got no idea where he came up with that list. But regardless, to say incompetency wouldn't be an impeachable offense, well, we have a difference of opinion. So what I want to refer to you is the preamble of the Articles of Impeachment. So again, you can find the articles at impeachdewine.com. Impeachdewine.com. You'll find the Articles of Impeachment. And my favorite part of that whole thing is the preamble. It's like the first 3 pages. And I anticipated I would get this kind of pushback from people saying, oh no, you can't impeach for this and you can't impeach for that, and impeachment is this and impeachment is that. I knew all this was coming and it was all going to be BS. So I prepared for this in advance. That's why I put it in the preamble explaining the history of impeachment, the authority for it in the Ohio Constitution, and what the words meant at the time that they were written. So if you want to go look up the articles, again, impeachdewine.com, download them yourself. The whole thing's only about 10 pages. And I would refer you to lines 53 and 54, where I quote the Ohio Constitution, Article 2, Section 24, where it says, the governor, judges, and all state officers may be impeached for any misdemeanor in office. And then it continues, but that's the relevant part. Any misdemeanor in office. Okay, misdemeanor. When we think of a misdemeanor today, certain things come to mind. But you have to ask yourself, well, what did misdemeanor mean when this was written back in the 1800s? And that's easy to find out. If you go to Webster's 1828 dictionary, you get the answer to that question. What were these people thinking when they wrote this? This is exactly what they were thinking. So again, if you're looking at the Articles of Impeachment, the preamble section, look on lines 62 and 63. So in Webster's 1828 dictionary, they've defined misdemeanor. So it includes what we think of today as crimes, but it also included, the definition at that time, was behavior, ill conduct, fault, or mismanagement. So those are the things you could impeach for at that time when it was written. We haven't changed the Constitution, so nothing's changed here. Just saying this is clearly what it meant at the time, and since we haven't changed it, that's what it still means today. Behavior, ill conduct, fault, or mismanagement. So now you might want to ask, well, has anybody in history of the state of Ohio ever been impeached for behavior, evil conduct, fault, or mismanagement? The answer is yes. Back in the 1800s, again, when the Constitution was written and Webster did his 1828 dictionary, multiple judges were impeached. One of which I think was actually removed from office. That means successfully tried and convicted in the Senate. Some of these other ones, I think there were some close votes in the Senate. But regardless, the House actually impeached, I think, 8 judges, all for similar reasons. So those reasons include, and again, this is on lines 80 and 87, 80 through 87 in the preamble of the Articles of Impeachment. So here's how some of the judges got impeached. Absent without leave. I think that was the guy who actually did get removed from office. Holding statutes unconstitutional. Don't you wish we could do that today? Impeach judges for holding statutes unconstitutional? Yeah, times have changed. Judicial arrogance. There's another reason I'd like to pick out a bunch of judges. Judicial arrogance and incompetence. Judicial incompetence. These were the reasons judges were impeached back in the 1800s. So then he continues, my colleague, state representative. There was no cancellation of the election or changing of the dates. Okay, so the governor claims, and my colleague here believes what the governor is saying, that no law was broken, that he didn't actually cancel the election or change any election dates. Okay, so you would have to argue that closing all of the polling locations is not tantamount to closing an election. So when millions of people are ready to show up and vote, and you close the polling location so they can't get in and can't vote, that is tantamount to cancel the election. Okay, I mean, I don't know how you argue that differently, but frankly, that's what courts are for, and that's what impeachment trials are for, so the governor can come in and make his argument. And, the senators will be there to listen, and we'll be listening in the House and, considering the articles of impeachment and what's called an impeachment hearing. So he says, so he goes on to say, the health director closed the polls and had the authority to do that. Well, again, we have a difference of opinion. No, the health authority does not have, the health department does not have the authority to cancel an election, nor does the governor. Only the General Assembly can do that. So my colleague goes on to say, the date setting was simply an extension of the early voting process. Technically, the election date was the same. Well, that actually I do agree with, because the General Assembly stepped in to create new legislation, which we have the authority to do, not the governor or the Ohio Department of Health. We created new legislation allowing all those disenfranchised voters that the governor screwed on election day, those millions of people who were not allowed to vote because he closed the polling locations, taking out the election. We extended, in essence, what was the early voting process, extended it 6 weeks or whatever it was. So all those people did have the opportunity to vote, but many did not. They were still confused. I heard from them that did not vote. They thought the election was still going to be in June, and that's because that was the original date that the Secretary of State and the governor rescheduled the election for, which neither of them have the authority to do. And you're telling me these aren't impeachable offenses? I mean, come on, give me a break. Then he says, nothing illegal has been done. Well, that's where we have a difference of opinion, but that's what courts are for, and that's what impeachment hearings are for. So since none of this is in the courts yet, if we have the impeachment hearings, which I certainly hope we do, that's the purpose behind all of this, then that's where all this will get decided and flushed out at that time. And then he ends it with, I've asked some of the best legal minds in Ohio. Best legal minds in Ohio. I have no idea who he's talking about. And it is always the same answer. There's no just cause for impeachment. Well, those best minds in Ohio apparently are not reading the Ohio Constitution. And, it's pretty clear that there are grounds for impeachment under both criminal charges as well as incompetence and mismanagement. So, if you're getting similar pushback from your state representative, have them call me and make sure they understand it's not too late to get on board to co-sponsor the articles of impeachment. They have not been filed yet. When they are filed, that closes the window for additional co-sponsors. So I'm intentionally leaving that window open. And hopefully at some point the speaker will come around to saying, yeah, governor's out of control, we've done all we can do, and it's time to impeach him and kick him out of office. Well, apparently the speaker's not there yet, but I'm holding us open until he gets there. So, we'll see. So anyway, that's my update for this week, and I'll probably be back next week or later on in a few days with something else. So again, this is John Becker, State Representative from Claremont County, and those are my thoughts for the week. Y'all have a great day. Bye-bye.